What are the signs that I'm mentally healthy? What are the signs that show I'm in trouble mentally? Next.
Dr. Gregory Jantz is a best-selling author of over 45 books and the founder of the Center A Place of Hope, voted a top 10 center for depression treatment in the U.S. As the pioneer of whole person care, Dr. Jantz is known as the messenger of hope. Now the nation's expert on anxiety, depression, substance abuse, relationships, trauma, and PTSD, here is Dr. Gregory Jantz.
It's been said that our country's in a mental health crisis or epidemic, that people are suffering mental health issues like never before. They've increased, and people are what we call higher acuity. The distress level's higher. Emergency rooms are busier with mental health issues. We can't seem to even get enough counselors to help where the need is. Now, this is all post-pandemic, but it's continuing, and it's been said as well that we've not even reached the top of that bell curve of the crisis that we're in, that it's continuing. So how do you know? Am I mentally healthy? Well, 40 years of working in the mental health field, I have a few thoughts around, well, what makes us healthy? And what are the signs? And I tell you, I've thought about this, and I want to share. It's a list, but number one is I always have to acknowledge there's a problem versus deny it. People who are emotionally healthy are those that, okay, when something's pointed out or something you don't want to hear, you don't just react, you consider what's being said before you are reactive. So I either respond appropriately or I react, which means I really can develop a blind side, a denial of maybe what others are seeing. So number one, I either acknowledge an issue is real and address it, or I move to denial. And when I move in the denial, I can step over the edge and become really unhealthy, and I can start developing addictions, and I'm living a life ultimately of non-reality. Number two, if I'm emotionally healthy, I understand the importance of relationships. I'm able to have a handful of people, 1, 2, 3, 4, a handful of folks in my life that I can be emotionally intimate, emotionally close. I have the ability to trust them, and they trust me. So I know, and I have a discernment on who to trust. So when I look at this, I wrote down the 3 words, fear of intimacy. If I am unhealthy, I'm afraid of intimacy. I'm afraid of connecting with anyone, because if I do connect, if I do try to connect, I believe something bad's going to happen. I believe that I can't trust them. I believe that they're going to do something bad to me. So I live a life of dysfunctional relationships. Think about it. Do I have 3, 4, 5 individuals in my life that I could say I'm close with? Now, oftentimes non-family members, oftentimes family, but I can really say I'm close to them, and there's that trust, and there's that emotional intimacy. And I know if I'm needing something, I can go to them and honestly say what's going on. There's that level of transparency. I'm not hiding. I'm not hiding my struggle. I'm not hiding what the truth is from others. So, okay, the next one to look at is the whole area of depression, of shame, of living a life with unaddressed mental health issues. So it was said that depression was the number 1 mental health issue and ultimately in the world. And then it was anxiety, and now it's trauma. The whole issue of people feeling traumatized and trauma. As we look at this, and we look at the whole area of having hidden depression. In other words, I've been struggling a long time, but I just hide it. I just cope. I just go on. But it grows deeper within me, and that depression sometimes is going to come out ultimately through despondency, ultimately through a despair in my life. And so I have to deal, if I'm going to be healthy, with any hidden emotional issues or mental health issues such as depression. Now, we could plug in anxiety and anxiety disorders and social anxiety. These we're seeing as mental health professionals be at an all-time high. That is what we're seeing. So anxiety, after a while, just to cope and to function, we tend to go into maybe self-destructive behaviors, and destructive behaviors like addiction. Maybe you start drinking, start popping pills, start escaping through food, escaping through social media. And so we've got to look at the reality of what is going on if I have I'm self-medicating emotional issues and I'm really not fully dealt with those. Anxiety, depression, hidden hurts, anger. Maybe I've been given a mental health diagnosis in the past, but I've never really dealt with the core issues. So that has to be attended to. The other sign that I could be in trouble, and it develops into self-hatred. You feel like, man, I've made mistakes in my life. I've made terrible mistakes. And then you start to punish yourself. There can be a physical punishment. I don't take care of myself. I allow myself to be abused. I withdraw. I isolate. But I punish myself because of one word. It's shame. I feel shameful. And that shame causes me to then pull away from people, and I can develop a very critical spirit towards others, and I put myself in this protective cocoon to try to keep myself from being injured and hurt from others. There is something called self-compassion, which says, yeah, I made some mistakes. I forgive myself. I move on. Some of the mistakes I may have made, I didn't mean to make. I did my best at the time, or my life was in a much different place. I've made changes. And so there's compassion and self-forgiveness versus moving towards self-hatred. And there really is a self-hatred that is there, where I move to a very powerful self-destructive patterns. This ultimately can end up in suicidal thinking and thinking about taking my life. And so this is why it's so important we look at what, again, could be hidden issues in my life, but compassion and self-forgiveness. All right. Now, trauma. Trauma is something else to look at. If I had significant abuse, significant loss, compounded issues, maybe of abuse in a relationship, but or maybe I've been in an accident, or I've witnessed a horrible accident. Maybe I've been given a medical diagnosis that was very traumatic, such as cancer. So, traumas in my life that remain active, in other words, I've never really dealt with what all that did to me. And when I was abused or sexually abused, yeah, those things happen, but I've never fully dealt with the trauma of that past. And dealing with that trauma of that past is necessary for me to move towards a life of recovery, a life of emotional recovery. This is why my most recent book is Triumph Over Trauma, because the traumatic issues that are left unattended will take us down that path of ultimately back to self-destruction. All right. Just a few considerations to think about how to know, am I emotionally healthy? And to simplify some of this, we can go back to the 3 deadly emotions. If I'm full of anger, hurt, is another word for anger. Rage, if I become enraged outwardly or inwardly. Okay, the next one is fear. Am I riddled with fear in my life? Anxieties, worries. I'm just riddled with fear. It paralyzes me. I don't do a lot of things because I'm afraid. And the final one would be shame. Shame says I'm defective. I feel like there's something terribly wrong with me that can never, ever be corrected. That's shame. And so looking at these three deadly emotions is a way of summarizing some of the thoughts today that I've given here on our little checklist. But remember, a healthy person will seek appropriate closeness, will have healthy relationships, will have trust, will have a degree of discernment about people and what's going to be healthy for you. They're going to be addiction-free, have to be addiction-free to be emotionally healthy. And that includes even food addictions. If I'm escaping, if I'm processing emotions through addictions, I will not be healthy. I can't. It robs me of intimacy. It hurts my physical self, my physical body. And so it hurts everything, actually, addiction does. Now, I also know that I am growing, and I'm growing as a person. I'm going to keep doing things that promote a sound mind. And a sound mind is not one that's riddled with worry, anxiety, all the what ifs. If we focused on news, focused on things in our culture and our world, we could probably feel like I don't have a very sound mind, because that immediately will be anger, fear, anxiety. And so our point of focus, when we're emotionally healthy, the point of focus tends not to be on all the bad or the negative. My point of focus is, I'm not going to ignore that, but my point of focus is I'm going to work on my emotional health. I am going to, as a sign of my emotional health, I'm going to be able to be of service and help to others. It just flows from who we are, because a final ingredient of emotional health is gratitude, is having a sense of gratefulness for life, for my relationships. I have a sense of optimism for the future. That's gratitude. A lot can be said and taught about gratitude, but it evolves as I grow emotionally healthy, and it's a byproduct of being emotionally healthy. All right, we're all working on it, but here's just some checklists, some things to think about, and also to go, okay, where do I need to put my point of focus, even this next month, so that I can create a sense of more health, emotional health, deal with those past issues, those past hurts that are at times overwhelming, but a willingness to deal, not stay stuck in the past, a willingness to deal with that, but to walk through what I have to walk through in the present in order to have a hope-filled future. Hope always comes when there's a plan. That's why we believe that here at the Center, a place of hope, that part of the plan needs to address the whole person, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and all components of our health, in order for us to have good, ongoing, steady progress for our future. A hope and a future.